All right, guys, welcome back to another episode of the Workbench, your resource-rich newsletter and podcast for home service owner-operators. Today, we're here with Kent, who runs Swift Demo out in Atlanta. Really excited to dive into his story, into his background, how he got his business off the ground, and yeah, everything in between. So, Kent, appreciate you hopping on. How's your week been?
Thanks so much, Brian. Yeah, it's been really great actually. I'm kind of prepping for a job where it's 3 hours away, so I have to move my whole crew, put them up in a house. So my mind's been a little occupied, but the week's been calm enough for me to do that. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I want to get into the background. I want to get the story, but that sounds like an interesting job. Can you talk a little bit more about what you got going on there?
Yeah, so we do demolition, specifically like selective demolition dismantlement for any type of remodel. And specifically, this is a commercial remodel. It's an old Red Lobster, no longer in business. We're going in, gutting the whole building, kind of taking the facade off as well, and getting it ready for like a clinic in the middle of nowhere, Georgia. So
Great, great.
perfect. Yeah.
Yeah, cool, man. All right, so let's start from the top. So
Yeah.
tell us a little bit about you and your personal story and your career, and then we can dive into the nitty gritty in terms of Swift Demo and how you got that business started.
Yeah, of course, man. Well, I feel like I have a pretty non-typical path into uh, service businesses, into the trades. I didn't. I technically I'm in a trades business now. So yeah, I never thought I'd be running a trades business, but here I am. I um, kind of got my career for a long time. I was in video and doing video stuff, and just really didn't like the industry. Ended up dropping out of film school, and then threw a dart at the next interesting thing, which was coffee. And I was in coffee for like I don't know, 8 years in the coffee industry. Did coffee carts, um, did an instant coffee company out of all things. I actually created the highest scoring instant coffee ever made with a company called Voila. So I created this process to extract this special concentrate and freeze dry it. And yeah, had that company for 6 years, uh, bootstrapped it, did a Kickstarter. Always just been like scrappy and trying to get some ideas off the ground. And um, I, I realize now doing demo, I was kind of just in the wrong vehicle. But uh, the through line through all of this is I love business. I love building businesses that serve people well, and I care about branding and culture, and just creating something that helps people. And so, after a long time working in coffee, dealing with investors and fundraising, like all sorts of crazy stuff, we had business all over the world from Dubai, Malaysia, Australia, New Zealand, working with time zone, supply chain, like just way too much, super complex business. I ended up having to shut it down. We just had a negative cash flow, and our partners that were funding the business, they wanted to pool their resources. And so the whole thing came crashing down. I was like, what am I going to do with my life? And I learned so much about myself and about business. I was like, man, I wish there was just something simple I could put my hands to next. I felt really defeated, honestly, coming out of that business. Like I had gotten some press and like I thought I was this coffee guy. And my mother-in-law approached me. She was like, all right, you had fun in coffee. Um, how about you try a demo business? I was like, demo business. And my mother-in-law, she runs a remodel company in Oregon. And I was like, no, no, no. Construction. I'm 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 too good for that. I'm cool. I'm in coffee. She's like, you're not making any money. I've got an idea for you. Look into it. Look into doing demo. Uh, we have some jobs that you can pick up, with their company. I was like, just look into it. I was like, all right. I've got nothing else to do. Literally just had my whole company collapse, fall apart, feeling pretty down on myself. And so I built a forecast. I built a pro forma. Was like, all right, let's see what this demo business could do. And I was like, hey, this thing looks pretty good. It cash flow positive. The jobs are straightforward. Like, here's your work, show up, do a good job, get paid. I was like, okay, I'll give this a try. And so she really convinced me to get started. And we started in January of 2022. And by the end of the year, I had done just under 500,000 my first year. I think we had like a 29% net profit. So after you have a year like that, I think you're kind of hooked.
Yeah.
You're like, this is it.
Yeah.
This is what I'm doing now.
Yeah. Hard to turn away from that. No, it's super interesting background. The fact that your camera looks so good and well lit, and that you have all the coffee stuff behind you is like a total summary of your entire career up till now. You got a great camera set up. You have a ton of coffee machines behind you. So it's like all encapsulated right there.
This is my friend's roastery. I use it as my office as well. So
there you go.
That's one of my old machines back there. So I put it here. That pays for my rent at this place. And I get to stay drinking the coffee, not making the coffee. So
there you go.
I'm happy. Yeah.
So this is a really common through line in all of the conversations and all of the great entrepreneurs I've met. Very rarely do I meet someone who, is second or third generation taking over a home services business. The most common trend I've seen is someone worked in some other industry, became disenchanted with that job or industry, and then came to home services and realized that you don't need to necessarily invent something new or create the next Facebook or go raise money to do some moonshot idea to have a really, really sound, sustainable business. So it's a very, it's definitely a pattern I'm seeing in terms of going from, video and coffee into home services and specifically demo. Were there any, do you think those backgrounds helped you at all? And like, what were some learnings that you took from those previous experiences in those very unrelated industries onto this business, which I'm excited to talk more about the details of Swift Demo, but anything you pulled from those previous experiences when you were first getting this off the ground?
100%. I think for me, the biggest impact was what I learned about culture, especially from the coffee business, about creating a company culture and a company vision that becomes infectious to the people who work for you and around you. And that's something that I really tried hard to create as I started to get employees and bring people around me, of casting that vision of like, this is not going to be a company where people show up to work and drag each other down all day, every day. We've all worked those jobs where somebody, it brings that negative influence, that negative attitude, and because of cancer on the team. Like, I'm not going to put up with that. We're going to cultivate an uplifting work environment. And our vision for this company is to serve our GCs, serve our project managers, and serve the homeowners really well. That's what we're here to do. And so, like, with coffee, I had, a business that could have become, who knows, it's like startup dream, right? And so I learned about how telling that vision, telling that story, and storytelling, like something that I gained from video storytelling, how you can get great buy-in and call greatness out of people. And so that's what I wanted to bring, from the failures in video, failures in coffee into Swift, into the trades, and like into an industry that is not known for that. And that could be, that could be somebody's competitive advantage. It's like a great place to work.
Let's go through the first 90 days of, I think it was 2022. So your mother-in-law, she's, pitches you on starting this business. She had some background. She knows some details about the business. Talk to us about like that first day. You're like, yes, I'm doing this. Okay, I got my first job. Did you show up with like a hammer and just like knock everything down, or like give us that first job and that kind of initial experience getting started?
Yeah, well, honestly, so my mother and father-in-law set me up on first job, and I'm pretty sure it was like over the weekend, because they knew it had to be a low pressure job with like somebody they knew and they were in control of. So I show up, and I think, they were laughing at me taking pictures. Like, I was probably dressed goofy for the job. I probably didn't have any of the right gear.
Yeah.
And, but I was there to learn and to work because I was bought in that I'm going to give it, you know, when I modeled it out, that's when I also decided I was going to focus on this for 2 years and not let up. I'd been distracted with lots of different opportunities before that. And I decided anything worth pursuing is worth pursuing for an extended period of time. And, so yeah, I showed up and they threw me right in. I feel like I caught 10% of what I was being taught. But I had to force myself to learn. And basically after that one like training job, they booked another one on the schedule for me and I just had to figure it out. I had them on speed dial, but it was all me. And I think when I talk to other people in home service, like that willingness to put yourself out there a little bit into that uncomfortable situation, like that's valuable because you're not going to know everything day one if you're just starting something, but being humble enough to lean on somebody else, but also like crazy enough to try it. Like there's something to that balance there. And I guess I had some sort of mix of those two, probably more on the crazy side. And, you start to catch on fast and you get addicted to, I became addicted to demo. I actually still love just doing demo. I mean, who wouldn't want to destroy stuff? So.
Yeah. So for me and other uneducated listeners, what is demo? What does it mean when you show up to a demo job? I'm guessing it's short for demolition. Talk to us, explain it to us.
Yeah.
What are you doing on the day to day?
So, like demo can mean a lot of different things. For some people, it means like tearing down an entire building. That is demolition. And then there's kind of all these subcategories of demolition as well. And on the residential side, it's really like dismantlement is, I guess, what the like industry pros and like the really big companies would call it, because you're going in and you're meticulously taking apart the finishes and prepping it for the next trade. So when somebody has a bathroom remodel, they have a kitchen remodel, they're redoing, all of their flooring. We're the guys that come in, take all the old out, prep it, and get it ready for the next trade who's going to install those finishes. And so it's actually quite niche, even within demolition in general. We're not doing full teardowns. We're not, bringing in an excavator, knocking down a house. It's very specific, and that's actually been a big advantage in it, and it serves our market really well.
So give me an example of the first couple jobs that you guys booked and completed. Are we talking? I think it'll be interesting for people who are listening or reading and are trying to think about which home services to start. So are we talking about clearing out the inside of a house? Are we talking about, sounds like clearing out the inside of a Red Lobster? Are we responsible for throwing everything away? Are you pulling dumpsters? Can you walk us through the anatomy of a job, if you will?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll break down the residential and commercial side of it. On the residential side, usually this is a remodel project. So has nothing to do with ground up construction, new builds, anything like that. So this is an existing home where a part of it is being remodeled. So let's say it's a master bathroom. I work with the remodeler, who's the GC on that project, and they've picked out, what the new shower is going to look like, new countertops and vanities. And so I get a checklist of all of those things to be torn out. And so what I do with Swift is we not only do that tear out, but we do the prep and protection and the haul off. And so what that looks like is we're coming in, laying down all of our flooring protection, protecting that home from damage to the other surfaces as well as dust. So we're doing full dust containment as well, putting up plastic, creating a negative air environment. So if we're kicking up dust, that's not leaving that room. And then, when we're taking it out, take that to a dump trailer, load it up, and then we haul it off and we're in and out. Now on the commercial side, usually it's called a TI or a tenant improvement. So these are projects where, like, let's say you have a store in the mall that's switching what it is, it's lids turning into a
Cinnabon.
jewelry store. Yeah,
Yeah.
Cinnabon, perfect. It's a restaurant that's changing hands. It's something like that. And so a lot of times this will be a tenant improvement. Sometimes they call it a remodel, but a TI is pretty common. And so with those, usually there's a set of plans. They send it out. There's a demolition page for the floor and for the ceiling, the reflected ceiling plan, RCP. And so on those projects, I put myself out on bid boards. I get invites, and so are other demo companies. And I'm taking those into a software, doing my takeoffs, doing my measurements, compiling a quote, and then sending that to the GC. Hopefully they win that job because a lot of times they're bidding against other GCs. And then if we all win, then we get to complete the job. So that's how it looks. It's very different on both residential and commercial. And there's very few people that do both. But I didn't start out with doing commercial. And for anybody who would be starting in demolition, I would say just start in residential. You learn the process that way. It's very rewarding to work with homeowners as well.
Right.
But in this type of business, you're technically a subcontractor. And so you don't have to go chasing down the funds from that homeowner. And it's more of a B2B type of business play where when I want to increase our revenue, I go out and I talk to GCs, remodelers, builders, and I land them, and then they bring me recurring jobs after that. Of course, I do one-off jobs for homeowners that reach out, but with demolition, most people aren't thinking like, oh, let me make a checklist of all the trades. Like demolition's not usually what people think about.
Yeah, super interesting. So it sounds like there's two core business models. One is the direct to the residential homeowner, and then the other is working through the general contractor. Now, what's the breakdown for your business? If you want to give numbers, great. If not, just percentages. Let's just say for 2024, what was the breakdown for you between commercial and residential revenue-wise?
Commercial and residential, I'm trying to remember. It was very close to 50-50. I believe it was 54% residential and 46% commercial, if I got the percentages right.
I might think that, the GC B2B revenue is more attractive because maybe you're not carrying the sales and marketing costs to get those jobs. Is that the case, or are both those revenue streams equal in your eyes as the business owner?
So let me explain that. Both of those are B2B for me.
Okay.
It's rare for me to have a direct to homeowner relationship.
Understood.
Yeah. So even on the residential side,
right,
I'm working with, another business who's hiring me. Now in Atlanta, so I have this business in two markets. I started it in Central Oregon, and now this past year, I personally moved to Atlanta. So I'm running the Atlanta division, and the Oregon division runs itself remote over there. And in Atlanta, just because it's such a larger suburb, I am getting a lot more direct homeowner jobs, and people are reaching out, finding me through SEO, going into my website. But these are usually people who they've done a remodel before, so they kind of understand it a little bit more than the average homeowner. Just because, most people aren't searching demolition, but those jobs are fun as well. You don't have to give a builder discount necessarily or a GC discount on stuff. So you get to have a slightly better margin.
Yeah, it reminds me a lot of my company. I would say our two main customer types are the home services companies directly, the owner of the HVAC company, the owner of the plumbing company, and we work with them. But then a growing and potentially soon to be larger portion of our customer set is actually the digital marketing and local SEO agencies who do the digital services for those. So you're not necessarily always going to be working with the Red Lobster per se, but you'll be working with the GC who's working with the Red Lobster. So I find that really interesting. Talk to me a little bit about sales and marketing, given that, most folks we talk to who run a more residential, more B2C focused business, it's a lot about local SEO. It's a lot about Google LSA, social media, Thumbtack, Angie's. For you, what's that marketing mix? How are you getting in front of these GCs and kind of building those relationships?
That's a really good question because I love marketing. I love SEO, all of that stuff. And I don't have to do quite as much as that as the normal person, but still the grassroots type of marketing approach has been just so powerful for us. Like literally yard signs just crush. Like like something as simple as yard signs just crush for us because the right person, people who see that and it applies to these GCs, like they don't see a demo company yard site. They see painting, they see pressure washing. And so when you have something out there that's a little bit different, it just works really well. And of course, cold calling. Like I'm just such a big fan of cold calling. I've had to grow a lot in, learning that process, learning my pitch. What am I saying? How to not come off like so desperate on the phone.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just do a scrape on Google. It's like, here's my list. I'm going to call 25 of these people per day. And, half of them are going to tell me to pound sand and that's fine.
My background is in B2B sales and tech. And I have an agency that I used to run. I have slowly winded it down now, but it's all for cold outreach for SaaS companies. And so as you're talking through your model with GCs, my light bulbs are going off. I'm like, oh man, that sounds like the perfect like cold outreach type of mechanic there, because these GCs, you can get in contact with them. They need your services. So makes a lot of sense there. So
especially on commercial, like everybody needs more people to shop for a bid. The more, the better. So with them, it's great. With residential, it just depends on the person. But
let's talk a little bit about branding. So I have your website here. We'll link it in the show notes. The branding definitely stood out to me as felt very modern, felt, I don't want to say techie because it's clearly not software, but like very much in that vein compared to, you see some of these home services sites and they look like they're from 1985 or whatever. So talk just a little bit about, and I see you got the hat on, love it, love the gear. Talk just about how you've thought, especially coming from a video background. I'm sure you have a very good sense of, visual representation and media. And with a coffee startup, like how do you think about branding for Swift?
Yeah, that's a good question. Like I hope I can answer it because I've done branding for so long in so many different avenues. I've worked with so many different agencies, and even for Swift, we worked with an agency because I just believe in that investment that, I'm not the best at branding, but I like to think of myself as like, I'll curate good branding, but I can't create the good branding. And so the first thing we did was allocate a budget to work with a true agency, one that I had worked with in past ventures, to create something that was just more sophisticated. And I thought that especially in the world of trades and subcontractors, if you have something that breaks the mold and is sophisticated, it kind of looks like it could be like a commercial GC outfit type of, look to it. You really catch people's eye, and it just communicates so much. I think so many people, especially in home service too, like they fall into trying to fit the mold so much that everybody is just an iteration of the person before them. And I think people would benefit a lot from slightly breaking the mold. And I think, that was definitely front of mind. I wanted something that would be cool to rep as well, like on my rigs and on my vehicles. So, we made that investment. I think, we didn't spend too much. We spent about $8,000 and got kind of our full logo package. And then from there, I've been able to, with some of my skills, morph it into different, formats throughout the years.
Speaking of your skills, have you leveraged video as a channel for the business?
I have a hate relationship with video.
Yeah.
I from doing however many weddings I did in high school and then commercials in college and then going to film school and like turning into homework. I never wanted to touch video again. But when I started Swift, and even with the coffee company, we tried to do little things, but I always try to stay out of the editing booth, like stay out of Final Cut or Premiere, just because I get so. Yes, I
you ever use Frame.io?
Yes, I'm using it today.
I worked there for about 4 years. Small world.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
Well, I'm I'm a user for sure. I'm,
There
I'm
you go.
hooked on it. So, you know,
Free shout out. Free shout out.
yeah, if you can give me a discount code, that'd be fantastic. Um, so recently I've really come around to it and decided that I wanted to pursue like putting some content out on YouTube. I've started a personal YouTube and, you know, figured that I need to be sharing some of these things that I've learned along the way, some of the mistakes that I've made. So I've kind of come around to it and I'm really enjoying the creative part of it now. But for so long, I was just on the technical editing side that I didn't want to touch it. But yeah, we've been pursuing it. I have some demo videos that'll like be like promo little reels, fizzle reels for demo. And I think it lends itself pretty well. But I should be doing so much more, Brian. I
Yeah.
really should.
Yeah, no, it's as a business owner, there's so many cool things you want to do, but then you wake up and there's a million things that you have to do. And so those
Yeah.
cool, fun projects get pushed back until you just sit down and say, okay, no matter what else happens, I'm going to focus on this mission critical thing today. But it's harder and harder the busier we get to find time for that. On the video side, I'll say as a consumer, I find a lot of really interesting reels and TikToks of people doing a trade. Now, I don't know what the
Yeah.
conversion rate on those would necessarily be, but just from like a content and branding perspective, I find myself watching those all the time because I'm I'm a pretty not handy person. I'm on the computer a lot, and watching someone properly lay pipe, or no pun intended, or do, you know, anything that's something I could never do, I find quite interesting. So there may be a market out there for the demo side of that.
I agree. I love them. It's really a shame that I haven't put more effort into it because those videos are awesome. We're all addicted to watching them, especially breaking stuff. I mean, I should really have somebody full time doing that. That'd be amazing.
Let's talk about hiring, and you mentioned culture.
Mhm.
Talk to us. Is what you do human capital intensive? Are you needing to hire a lot of guys? Is it like roofing where you need a lot of folks? And if you are, what's your philosophy on building out the team?
Yeah, well, Brian, I think you're gonna like find this crazy because my first hire in 2022 is still with me today as a demo person, and so are my second and third hires. Like we've had almost no turnover,
Amazing.
no negative turnover, only, you know, weeding some people out. And I don't know how we do it, honestly. Um, it's like it's kind of crazy because like demo is hard. Demo is like roofing. It beats you up. It beats up your body physically. Um, these guys, you know, they put everything into it. Your knuckles, your joints, like everything gets sore doing demo, especially day in, day out carrying stuff. And somehow we've just created a culture that people stick around and they love what they do. Obviously we pay well also, but I'm super blessed to have the guys that have just stuck with Swift, and, you know, shout out Dan and Chase and, you know, all those guys that have just been around this whole time. It's truly incredible. And so I think normally demo is supposed to be a high turnover business, and it just hasn't been for us. And part of that process and like part of what I have built into Swift is like really being in tune with my guys and where they're at, both mentally and physically as well. Like really having weekly check-ins and be like, hey, I know we're pushing hard. Like, especially, you know, we get into weeks where it is just go, go, go. And I'm like, there's a little gap and I fill it right away. It's like, we're just churning and burning. And I try to make sure that I have check-ins and have people come up, resurface for air and go like, how are we feeling? Like, do we have to book in a rest day? And so my strategy for many years was every other Friday in the month was a scheduled rest day. And we would schedule like past that all the time. And then if the full month got full, I would then, with approval of my guys, only fill those rest days. So be like, hey, where are we at? Do we want to fill this Friday, or do we need the rest day? And kind of like get their feedback on it. And you can tell when people are like, it's like, okay, no, we're not touching that Friday.
Yeah.
Like you get that day off.
Yeah.
And I think that's been a good tactic. And just like really caring about people, like as simple as that sounds, like actually caring about where people are at. it's just been huge. And I think another strategy that I, I hate to even call it a strategy, but just like I feel like I've been able to write a good job posting and kind of cast that vision even in the job posting, and be able to sort people out and give people a trial, a paid work interview where like the team has to vote on it. And it's like, my leaders of culture, the people who champion my culture, like they know what we're looking for now. It's like, okay, this is not Swift material, and kind of letting them take the lead. And that all starts with me. It starts with how I instill that. And it's a constant thing. You always feel like you're repeating yourself and like saying these values over and over again, and bothering people, but like, are you still good? Are you feeling good? But at the end of the day, that's what you need to do to keep people around, keep people happy, and have low turnover.
Have you gone through the exercise of writing down those values for the company?
Yeah, we have company value statements, and this year we're growing enough to where I think we need to make like a true mission, vision, and values like official statements. We kind of have the ones that I created on the website. It's like the things we stand for, you know, the things we uphold. But I think it's about time that we like revisit and refresh them.
Mm-hmm. Do you mind sharing them if you can think of them off the top of your
Yeah, well,
head?
one of them I mentioned earlier. It's like I think, let me see, how do I phrase it? It's like um, we cultivate an uplifting and positive workplace environment. Um, we exceed expectations, especially with promptness. I think that's a really good one for
Huge.
anybody in home service for sure. And like the big one, the top one is like, we make our clients look good.
Yeah.
Like that's what we're here to do. We're not here to look good. We're here to make our clients look good. Like
Right.
we are a sub. We're not the main deal.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, we're not throwing people under the bus. Like that is a big no-no. When stuff goes wrong, we handle it directly with them. We don't bring the homeowner in. We don't bring, everybody into the mix. It's like, we're there to make them look good. Be respectful of that relationship.
Expansion, getting the business off the ground, expanding from Oregon to Georgia. Seems like a lot's been happening, hiring, building the team, building the culture. What's the 2025 and beyond plan look like for you guys, Ken? Is it new cities? Is it doing more in Atlanta and Oregon? Would love to hear, what you're looking forward to in the future for the business.
Yeah, for sure. Well, last year was such a huge transition year for us because I stepped out of the business. I hired a general manager, and then halfway through the year hired a commercial project manager to really take up the commercial sector in Oregon. And so those two people like really replaced me. And I was like crossing my fingers, like, how is this going to work out? Is this going to keep going? And thankfully I have an amazing guy, Jim, who really has taken that culture and that attitude and the love for demo and the love for serving the clients and like championing that in Oregon to where I can step away and start building it here. And our focus for this year is really one, getting Atlanta off the ground. There's so much more commercial opportunity here. I mean, there's just more, it's just a bigger marketplace. It's more competitive, but it's a bigger marketplace. Like the average job sizes are just way larger. But with that, a lot more learnings. And then in Oregon, I think it's developing outside of our Tri-Cities little town. Like we're kind of in a small mountain town, Bend, Oregon. We service like three little cities in there, and we're kind of like the demo company for that area. And so it's one, expanding beyond that and taking on out of city projects, and two, growing the services we offer, maybe stepping up into that more traditional large scale demolition, knocking down buildings, using heavy equipment for Oregon. So that's the plan right now. Hopefully not opening up new cities. That'd
Yeah.
probably be a little too much right now, but I think we have enough on our plate with those two goals.
Love it. Love it. Anything we didn't cover, Kent, that you were wanting to talk about or maybe share with the audience?
Um, the only other thing that has kind of been on my mind is is around people who get started in these types of businesses, and they hit that they hit that wall at some point, and
That
like,
valley of despair, right?
for
They're never
sure,
going to make it out.
exactly. And like, I feel like in a certain sense, I'm going through that in Atlanta, where, I came out of that in Oregon, and now I'm like re-going through that again. And that's such a tough place to be in, because you haven't experienced the compounding, the tailwind effect of what happens when you get past that. And it's real, and it's hard, and it keeps a lot of these guys who get started, get excited, and then, they go through that dip, that season where, for me, it was always like, I never realized this for years, but it was like the school season. As soon as spring break hit, I wasn't thinking about it, but all the jobs would dry up. All of a sudden, like, everything would push, and I wouldn't know what to do with my guys. And I'd start questioning everything again. Even a year and a half in, I was like questioning the business. We'd done, 500, and then a year and a half in, we had already done another 500, and then it like dries up for 2 weeks, and you're like, this is it. Nobody wants demo.
Yeah.
And I can't stress that enough. Like, that's something that's so present on my mind right now, of like, you just have to push through, because nobody knows who you are. That word of mouth hasn't taken effect yet, because only, that top layer of people that you reached out to, you're only one layer in, then those people you need to perform a work for, and then they'll tell like 2 people, right? It's like, you need to have that time to where the word of mouth, the momentum, and that wind in your sails picks up, and then you start having people call you. And for me, that was really, it took 18 months to even get to that point. Even through all the success and like good jobs we had done. And so, I don't know, like, I encourage guys to, like, it's hard to get excited about that, but that's a rite of passage and something you need to learn to go through, because you always look back at that and go, I've been here before, and I know what's on the other side now. So that first one is the hardest, and getting through that is really important, especially if you're just starting out and you haven't experienced that before.
Yeah, I think every entrepreneur can relate to that. And like you said, the first one's the scariest because you don't think it'll ever end. And then hopefully for most people it does. Then you're like, okay, the second times this happens and seasonality brings things down, or something's not working right, I need to fix it. You have a little more hope. It's like, okay, I know what it felt like to go from not working to working. And I think I can get that feeling again.
Yeah. Yeah. You build up your calluses. That's what it's all about.
Yeah. Love it, Kent. Well, we appreciate you coming on. I appreciate you coming on. Where can people find you? Are you on Twitter, Instagram? What's the best place for people who are listening or reading to connect with you and follow your journey?
Yeah, well, I'm on Twitter. I'm giving that a big push this year. Kind of just got into the space, connecting with you and other awesome people,
yes, sir,
in SMB world.
Yep.
And so follow me on Twitter, Kent.FYI. That's my handle. And also trying to get YouTube off the ground as well. So putting the effort in, whether or not people watch, we'll see a year later what that looks like. So those two. And then, of course, swiftdemo.com, swift-demo.com is my website.
Perfect. All right, Ken, thank you again. Hope you have a great rest of your week, great weekend. And talk to you soon.
Thanks, Bryan.